I've never told this story out loud without feeling stupid afterward. Every time I tried, people either laughed or gave me that look, the one that says they think you're exaggerating or lying for attention. So I stopped talking about it altogether. But what happened at mile marker 47 was real. And no matter how much I try to rationalize it, there are details that don't make sense, details I can't explain away. Back in 2016, I worked nights for a small telecommunications maintenance company in Nevada. We were contracted to inspect and repair cell towers across rural areas, places most people never had a reason to visit. I was in my early 20s, single, and needed the money. Night shifts paid more, and I liked being alone, so it worked out. Most nights were uneventful. I'd drive for hours through empty highways, check equipment, log data, and head back before sunrise. Sometimes I wouldn't see another car all night. That job taught me just how quiet the desert can be. On the night everything happened, I was dispatched to a tower listed as MM 47, shorthand for mile marker 47. According to the work order, the tower had been transmitting irregular pings. Nothing urgent, just something that needed to be checked before it became a problem. I remember thinking it was strange I hadn't been there before. I'd worked that region for months. Still, I loaded up my tools, filled my truck with gas, and left the city around midnight. The drive took nearly 2 hours. As the city lights faded behind me, the road narrowed into a single stretch of asphalt cutting through endless desert. No streetlights, no buildings, just darkness, illuminated by my headlights. At exactly 1:38 a.m., my GPS screen froze. The map stopped updating, and the blue dot that marked my location blinked once, then disappeared. A second later, my phone showed no service. That wasn't unusual out there. I didn't think much of it until my radio cut out too. The faint hum of static vanished, leaving absolute silence. I tapped the radio, switched channels, even turned it off and back on. Nothing. When I passed the sign for mile marker 47, I felt a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. The road curved slightly, and that's when I saw it. The tower stood alone about 100 yards off the highway, its red warning lights blinking slowly against the night sky. The structure looked older than most of the others I'd worked on, rusted in places, cables hanging looser than they should have been. What bothered me wasn't the tower. It was the silence. No wind, no insects, no distant engine noise. The desert felt paused. I pulled my truck onto the gravel access road and parked near the equipment shed. As I stepped out, the cold hit me harder than expected. My breath fogged in front of my face. I grabbed my clipboard and flashlight and started walking toward the shed. That's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I stopped. I hadn't had service in miles. Slowly, I pulled my phone out. Unknown caller. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Every instinct told me not to answer it. I did anyway. "Hello," I said. At first, there was nothing but static. Then I heard breathing. Not heavy breathing, more like shallow, labored breaths, uneven and strained. "Can you hear me?" a man whispered. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in a long time. "Yeah," I said. "Who is this?" There was a pause. Then he said, "You shouldn't be here." I laughed nervously, assuming it was some kind of prank. "I'm working, man. Whoever you are, you've got the wrong number." Another pause. "I'm standing behind your truck," he said calmly. My heart jumped into my throat. I turned around immediately, sweeping my flashlight across the area. There was nothing there. "No, you're not," I said, my voice shaky despite my efforts. "There's no one here." "You just checked," he replied. My stomach dropped. "How did you—" I started, but the line went dead. I stared at my phone, then shoved it into my pocket and tried to focus on my job. I told myself it was coincidence. A lucky guess. Someone messing with me. Still, I moved faster than usual. As I opened the equipment shed, I kept glancing over my shoulder. The red lights above the tower blinked steadily, offering the only movement in the entire landscape. The equipment readings were normal. Voltage levels stable. No visible damage. But the feeling of being watched never left. When I finished, I headed back toward my truck, and that's when I saw them. Footprints. They were pressed into the dust near the access road, leading from the highway straight to my driver's side door. Barefoot. No shoe marks. No tire tracks nearby, just human footprints, perfectly defined. They stopped inches from my door. I ran. I jumped into my truck, slammed the door, and locked it immediately. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my keys twice before getting them into the ignition. Before I could start the engine, my phone rang again. Unknown caller. Against my better judgment, I answered. "I told you not to come," the voice said. "Now you're on the list." "What list?" I yelled. "Who are you?" "The ones who hear us," he replied softly. The call ended. I turned the key. Nothing happened. The engine didn't even try to turn over. Panic set in fast. I tried again. Still nothing. Then the radio crackled to life. Not music. Not dispatch. Whispers. Dozens of them, layered over each other, overlapping and distorted. And they were all saying my name. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Inside the cab, outside, even inside my head. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel and turned the key again. This time, the engine roared to life. I didn't hesitate. I threw the truck into gear and floored it, gravel spraying behind me as I tore back onto the highway. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Someone was standing at the base of the tower. A man, tall, thin, completely still. He was smiling. Not a normal smile. His mouth was stretched too wide, like he was forcing his face into an expression it wasn't meant to make. I didn't look back again. I drove until the sky began to lighten, not stopping until I reached the outskirts of the city. My phone regained service, and my radio crackled back to life as if nothing had happened. The next morning, my supervisor called me into his office. He had my work order pulled up on his computer. "There's a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. "There is no tower at mile marker 47, he said. "There never has been." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He didn't smile. I described the tower, the shed, the access road. He shook his head slowly. "That location has been empty desert for decades. No permits, no installations, nothing." The work order had vanished from the system, so I had the call logs on my phone. I quit that afternoon. Years have passed since then. I don't work nights anymore. I don't answer unknown numbers. But sometimes, late at night, my phone will buzz. Unknown caller. No voicemail. No record of the call. And every time it happens, I'm certain of one thing. Whatever was at mile marker 47 knows I heard it. And it's waiting for me to answer again. I worked overnight security for almost 3 years, and in that time, nothing ever happened. That's why I took the job in the first place. Quiet building, easy pay, long empty hours to kill. Or at least, that's what I thought. The warehouse sat on the edge of town, surrounded by chain-link fencing and stretches of undeveloped land. No houses nearby. No businesses open at night. Just an empty road that wrapped around the property and disappeared into darkness. Inside, the place was massive, rows of tall metal shelving stacked with sealed medical supplies, pallets shrink-wrapped in plastic, and long concrete corridors that echoed every sound. During the day, it buzzed with forklifts and workers. At night, it felt like a completely different building. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I worked alone. My routine never changed. I clock in, grab the handheld radio, check the cameras, and do a slow patrol of the building every hour. Between patrols, I sat in the security office watching feeds from 16 cameras. At exactly 2:17 a.m. every night, the radio system performed an automated test. It always started with a short beep, then silence. We were told to ignore it. For the first year, that's all it ever did. Until one night, it didn't stop. The beep continued longer than usual, 5 seconds, then 10. I remember glancing at the wall clock, confused. Then the sound changed. The beep stretched into a flat, steady tone, like an emergency broadcast signal. Before I could react, a voice came through the radio. "This is an emergency broadcast," it said. The voice didn't sound like the automated system. It sounded human, too human. "This is an emergency broadcast. Do not look outside." I froze in my chair. My first thought was that someone was playing a prank. Maybe a dispatcher messing around. But the tone was wrong. There was no static, no distortion, just a calm, deliberate voice. The message repeated. Each time it replayed, The audio degraded slightly. The words stretched and warped, as if the recording were being copied over itself again and again. This is an emergency broadcast. Do not look outside. I grabbed the radio and tried switching channels. Every channel carried the same message. I picked up the desk phone and called dispatch. They answered on the third ring. "There's no test scheduled tonight," the dispatcher said after I explained what was happening. "Are you sure it's not interference?" "I'm sure," I said. "It's telling me not to look outside." There was a pause. "Just stay in the office," she said. "We'll send someone to check it in the morning." I hung up, unsettled but trying to stay calm. That's when the cameras glitched. Every exterior camera feed, front entrance, perimeter fence, parking lot, filled with heavy static. Thick, crawling noise that completely obscured the image. All except one. Camera 6. It faced the loading dock on the far side of the warehouse. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. Just the dock doors and the empty concrete pad outside. Then something moved. A figure stepped into view. It was tall, too tall, and unnaturally thin, like its body had been stretched. It stood facing the camera, perfectly still, arms hanging at its sides. The camera timestamp flickered. The radio crackled again. "If you hear knocking," the voice said, "quieter now, do not respond." The words sent a chill straight through me. Almost immediately, there was a knock on the security office door. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock. I didn't move. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stared at the door, half expecting it to open on its own. The knocking continued. Knock, knock. I looked back at the camera feed. The figure's head twitched violently, jerking to one side, then snapping back forward. The movement was wrong, too fast, too sharp, like a glitch in a video. The camera began zooming in on its own. I hadn't touched the controls. As the image enlarged, I saw its face, or what should have been a face. Its skin was pale and smooth, stretched tight across its skull. No eyebrows, no nose I could clearly make out. Its mouth was closed, but strained like it was holding something back. The radio whispered, barely audible now. "It knows you're awake." The knocking stopped. For several seconds, everything was silent. Then the figure's mouth opened. It stretched wider than any human jaw should allow, pulling down toward its neck. Darkness filled the opening, swallowing what little detail the camera could capture. The radio let out a burst of static so loud I flinched. The camera feed cut to black. All at once, every light in the security office flickered. I stayed in that chair until sunrise. I didn't check the cameras again. I didn't respond to any more radio sounds. I just sat there, listening to my own breathing and watching the clock inch towards 6 a.m. When my shift finally ended, I opened the office door cautiously. There were handprints on the glass. They were smeared, as if someone had pressed their palms hard against it. From the inside, I called my supervisor as soon as I got home. He told me I was the third guard that month to report an emergency broadcast incident. 2 others had quit immediately after. A month later, the warehouse shut down. Officially, it was due to budget cuts. Unofficially, every overnight guard had experienced the same message. This is an emergency broadcast. Do not look outside. And every one of them said the same thing. Something was already there. Listening. Waiting. I've driven through rural Pennsylvania more times than I can count, and nothing about that night felt unusual at first. I was about 6 hours into a solo road trip, heading home after visiting a friend, and it was already past 3 a.m. I've been fighting sleep for the last hour, blasting music and cracking the window to keep myself awake. When my gaslight came on, I felt relief more than anything. The station appeared suddenly out of the darkness, a lonely patch of yellow light on an otherwise empty stretch of road. One pump was working. The others were dark. No cars. No movement. I considered driving past it. Something about the place felt off. The building looked older than it should have been, like it hadn't been renovated in decades. The fluorescent lights flickered irregularly, and the station sign buzzed faintly as if struggling to stay on. But I needed gas. I pulled in, filled my tank, and noticed something immediately. There was no sound. No insects. No wind. Not even the hum of traffic from the road behind me. The glass door chimed softly when I stepped inside. The air smelled stale, like dust and old paper. The shelves were sparsely stocked, snacks that looked years past their expiration dates, faded labels, curling price tags. Behind the counter sat a single clerk. He was older, maybe late 50s or early 60s, with gray hair and a slouched posture. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at anything. His eyes were fixed on the blank wall behind the register. "Hey," I said. No response. I grabbed a drink from the cooler, the hum of the refrigerator unnaturally loud in the silence. As I walked toward the counter, something on the wall near the restrooms caught my eye. A bulletin board. It was covered in flyers. Missing persons. Dozens of them. Some old, yellowed with age. Others newer, printed in crisp black and white. I didn't mean to look closely. I just did. The first few were strangers, faces I didn't recognize, names I'd never heard. But then my eyes landed on one flyer and my breath caught in my throat. It was my face. Same haircut, same jawline, same small scar on my chin from when I was a kid. Same name, same age. I stared at it, waiting for my brain to correct the mistake, to tell me it was just someone who looked like me. But the details were exact. The date at the bottom made my stomach drop. Missing as of tomorrow. My heart started pounding so hard it hurt. Slowly, I turned toward the clerk. "That poster," I said, my voice barely steady. "Where did it come from?" He didn't move. "You shouldn't have come in," he said flatly. The words sent a cold wave through me. "What is this place?" I asked. Still staring at the wall, he said, "They always stop here first." I backed away from the counter, every instinct screaming at me to leave. I reached for the door handle. The lights shut off. Complete darkness swallowed the store. I heard the door lock. Click. I fumbled for my phone, the glow from the screen barely illuminating the room. The missing persons board was right in front of me now. Every single flyer had changed. They all had my face. Different photos. Different angles. Some of them looked wrong, like they'd been taken when I wasn't aware. I heard movement behind the counter. Slow footsteps. The clerk spoke again, his voice closer now. "They don't like it when you look too long." I spun around. The clerk was standing upright now, his posture no longer slouched. His head tilted slightly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. When he turned to face me, I realized what was wrong. His eyes were gone, just smooth skin where they should have been. I screamed and ran for the door, slamming my shoulder into it. It didn't budge. My phone flickered and died in my hand. The flyers began peeling themselves off the board, fluttering to the floor like dead leaves. I felt something brush past my arm. Whispering filled the room, soft, overlapping voices saying my name, repeating it over and over again. The clerk spoke, his voice no longer human. "They're ready for you." The light snapped back on. The store looked normal again. The bulletin board was empty. The clerk was back behind the counter, staring at the wall. The door was unlocked. I didn't hesitate. I ran outside, jumped into my car, and sped away without looking back. My hand shook so badly I nearly ran off the road. I didn't slow down until the sun started to rise. Later that day, curiosity got the better of me. I searched online for missing persons reports from that area. I found one. My name, my photo, listed as missing. The date was the next day. I called the number listed. It rang once. Then a familiar voice answered. "You shouldn't have looked." The line went dead. That was weeks ago. Every night since, I've had the same dream. I'm standing in that gas station, staring at the board. And every flyer has today's date.